I'm Ed Eigerman. This is Clay Caviness. We're from Google's Macintosh Operations group. We're very excited to hear about the MacDevOps conference because we are passionate about DevOps. And this is an overview, basically, of our approach, our DevOps approach to managing Macs at Google scale. So, I'm going to tell you a little story. Legend tells us of a time when there were very few Macs at Google. And then an evil wizard came. And very, very rapidly, Mac OS X became the largest desktop and laptop system I use at Google. It's managed by these 7 little dwarves: Dopey, Bashful, Sleepy, Grumpy, Sneezy, and Dot. Oops, that's Sneezy. Sorry, Sneezy and Dot. I got ahead of myself. We live in a magical castle in New York City, except for one of us who lives in a magical castle in Mountain View, California. So we're a slightly distributed team. We also work very closely with teams in London, Zurich, Boulder, Colorado, and some other places as well.
So at Google, we have 4 desktop OSs that we support: OS X, Windows, Ubuntu, and Chrome. However, OS X is the most numerous of all of them. So we have tens of thousands of Macs. We have at least 2,000. The actual number is 65,659. All of them under management. That's 30-day actives. Ed and I gave a similar talk to this a few years ago at LISA in DC. And at that time, we said it was 43,207. So that's around 38 new Macs per day, every day, 7 days a week for the last year and a half. And that is crazy. The good news is our team is basically sort of stayed the same size. It's amazing. So site reliability engineering at Google is sort of the way we manage things, and it's treating operations as though it's a software problem. So all of these Macs we manage in this sort of fashion.
Right. This line is stolen from a Google Help Wanted ad. So the Google way of Macintosh operations, it's not to say we own it, but we use it. We use open source tools. We use a lot of open source tools. We try to only use open source tools if we can. If we don't have a tool that we like, we try to write it ourselves. And if we write it ourselves, we try to open source it again after we finish writing it. And we'll talk about a couple of examples for all this stuff. Everything we do should be repeatable, automated, and reviewable. We're very serious about code quality, and we're very serious about security. So everything we do should always do the same thing every time you do it, and more than one person should work on everything. Now, if you're a smaller shop, that may be a challenge, but it's a nice goal if you can do it. A big movement right now, we've had a couple of other people from Google do presentations on this, is moving away from the privileged network. So our philosophy is that there's no privileged network. Any end user on a Mac has the same experience here at the conference, at Starbucks, or in a Google office, more or less. We're very, very serious about security, of course. Security drives a lot of what we do. And we like to use our own tools to fix our own problems. So we'll talk a little bit about that. These are things that you could do on Google technology as well, or things that you can look at a variety of different things to do. We always pick Google, but you can pick other things. So open source. So we've heard about Puppet. We use Puppet for configuration management on all our Macs. We use Monkey for package management. You've heard a lot about Monkey recently. Imagine that. We use an open source project called The Luggage for creating the packages we distribute with Monkey. We use AutoDimage for creating our base images. We use Cranky to monitor state change on the Macs. And we use a whole bunch of other open source tools, some of which we'll also talk about in later slides. We use one commercial product which is our antivirus solution, using solution in a really broad sense. And we're not all that happy about it, but that's how it is. We won't talk much about Monkey because you've heard about it, but we use it. We have 65,000 Monkey endpoints. We really, really love Monkey. So Cranky we use. It's just an example of open source project. It's a Python script. Uses Cocoa frameworks for listening to system events and kicking off various things when they run. We use it for things like determining if a machine is on Corp for the few things we still care about, whether they're on Corp or not, doing proxy settings, triggering management tools to run if they haven't run in a given period of time, and things like that. And also we actually track all application launches using Cranky across the entire fleet. And Clay has to go through all the application launches every day.
Yeah, one by one.
One by one. Whenever the system configuration framework sees an event, it instantiates the network state change class, or sorry, in this case, it instantiates the network state change class, and then does whatever the method is. We log all our current SSIDs, for instance, just together into log stream, and then run some management tools on top of it.
All right.
Sorry.
Hold on. Can I make these a little bigger so I can see what slide I'm looking up all the time? Does that work?
No,
I don't know. All right, that's fine. So when we don't have an open source solution out there, or the open source solutions out there aren't scalable or big enough for our needs, we tend to write our own. Some of the ones, Simian, Plan B, Santa, and I think GMAC PyUtil got to mention. It's just a collection of Python utilities. Simian is a server for Monkey. This runs on App Engine. It's built in-house by our own team, and then we open source the whole thing. Since it's on App Engine, that means it scales really well. We just put the thing there, and the backends just add more if we have more clients. So we haven't made any changes to Simian. It just handles more and more users as they come up, around 38 a day, apparently. Excuse me. So we don't actually pay for this internally. It doesn't really get back charged, but every time we've run the numbers, we ask someone to say, hey, how much would Simian cost for all of our machines if we actually had to pay for it? On App Engine, it turns out to be a couple $100 a year for all of the stuff, so it is relatively inexpensive. This is sort of the view from the Simian website, an instance. These are from the open source site, so a little bit out of date, but we can manage hundreds of packages, thousands even. I mean, I don't know how we have right now, several hundred.
Well, we have 300 so active packages,
Yeah.
and then thousands of packages that should be deleted and we never have.
Yeah. So all of the catalogs and the manifests are all generated on the fly. So the client connects and says, hi, I'm such and so client, and here's who I am. All of the stuff gets generated on the fly. The actual package manifest stuff is fairly fine-grained controls. You just check boxes, things happen. It's pretty nice. So Plan B. So users do terrible things. We all know users are horrible, terrible, especially if they have local admin, which many of our machines still do. So, like for example, we once had a user describe Puppet as a virus. And he gave explicit steps on an internal mailing list on how exactly you can uninstall Puppet and stop it from running. So we needed ways to to fix that if the users break their stuff intentionally. I mean, to a certain extent, if they just break everything, it's a a management issue. But we want to try to fix things as well as we can. So on the flip side, we also do terrible things occasionally, and it would be nice to have some tool in the background that runs in a way. We made some horrible mistake. Hopefully we've it's gone through a lot of checks, but occasionally things go weird, go sideways. So we have a tool we wrote. It was initially just a bash script that connected to website, downloaded some packages, and like Factor and Puppet and Monkey and some other things, and just ran the post-install scripts, and magically that worked. That had some issues since it's bash, and bash is horrible for anything more than 10 lines. If it's more than 10 lines, don't use bash. Anthony, actually in the back, rewrote it as an Objective-C program, which helps us a lot because we're able to do better checking for the SSL certificates and ensure that we're actually talking to the server that we think we're talking to, and we're not getting man in the middle on the way, and sure, install this Puppet that is maybe not Puppet. So it's pretty good. So there's a wrapper script that basically checks if the management tools have run in X days, and if they haven't run successfully in X days, install the packages and do the post flights, and hopefully everything's fine.
So the principles of repeatable, automatable, reviewable, just some places where we've used that. The luggage. So the luggage is a system for building packages that's based on make. And while make is horrible in its own way, it's great for us because it means that there's a make file for every package. It can be reviewed by other team members. And every time we drop new files and we run the same make package, we should get the same results every single time. So it's very consistent. Not always pretty, but it's very consistent. Puppet, of course, we have a code review process for all of the Ruby that goes into our Puppet, all of the Puppet code that goes into our Puppet, manifests and facts. Everything we do, both for the luggage and for Puppet, is in source control. So we have a very extensive source control system that allows us to do code reviews and automatic linting of everything that we work on. Simian, likewise, we recently sort of increased the reviewability of that by adding an approvals layer to it. So any single administrator can't push a package to the fleet. So it takes one administrator can propose a package to the fleet, but it takes a second administrator to actually push it out to the fleet. So we at least theoretically have two sets of eyes on every action that goes on. Because again, a bad actor or someone whose credentials have been compromised can compromise 65,000 machines very, very quickly with Monkey because it's very effective.
Change it. Okay. So Ed mentioned this a little bit. So there is no privileged network. It's the internal sort of firewalled off with perimeter security. The corporate network that's not a good idea anymore. It's problematic mostly because if the perimeter is breached, then of course everything inside is a soft, gooey center. It's like the old sort of castle. You have the moat and the walls, but if someone gets inside and then you're inside, it's easy to get around. So it's better to have the endpoints be as secure as possible and sort of do all of the access controls based on that. And increasingly we have, not increasingly, especially Google, but in general, there's an increasingly mobile world out there. So like our fleet is, I don't know, like 85 or 90% laptops. And they go from network to network, and they go home, and they go on vacations, and they travel for work, and they're in coffee shops and all over the place. And if the management tools require a Corp network, they're not going to run as often as we would like them to, or never if they're just always working from home or something like that. We don't really want to require VPN for lots of reasons as well. Harold Wagner, I should say, and Jan Monch did a talk about this the same year we were at Lisa a couple years ago. There's a link to their presentation at the end of the slide as well. And Betsy Beyer and Rory Ward also published an article in Login magazine for Usenix, also all about this. We call it Beyond Corp, which is there's been a fascinating sort of change of events internally at Google. Right now, we only require a privileged network for the very first time a Mac is set up and the very first time a user logs into that Mac. With mobile accounts backed by LDAP right now, that's changing eventually, but that's the only thing that ever needs a corporate network. After that, the machines can be anywhere with the internet and everything will be fine. Which? Oh, right. Yeah, we're working to replace the LDAP-backed stuff with a Open Directory plugin that talks to an externally facing SSO site, which is fine. Worked great in 10.9. It works in 10.11 developer, but it's completely broken the whole way in 10.10. It's especially annoying because that's just the only sanctioned way to do Open Directory plugins. And if you take the code they have on the site and you compile it and you make a no-op and you install it, it just breaks on 10.10. So it's kernel, anyway. I could rant for a while. So the two main things that are, or the two main management tools we have are Simian and Monkey for package management again, and Puppet for configuration management. So Simian is App Engine, so all of our Macs just talk to App Engine directly. There's no, even if they're on an internal corporate network, it goes to App Engine externally. Everything happens there. For Puppet, we don't use Puppet servers. There are Puppet servers inside of Google, but the Macs only talk to the CAs once at the beginning to get a Puppet certificate for kind of stupid reasons that it's going away eventually. What we do instead is we have all of the Puppets manifests and resources and everything basically tarred up and GPG signed, and then the clients, the machines, the Mac machines, they just connect to a publicly accessible server over SSL. They download the Puppet manifests, expand them locally, and then apply them locally. So I guess in some ways we have 65,000 Puppet masters, sort of, in a way. So they all just sort of apply themselves. That way, if they're on the network or off the network or anything, it runs.
So security drives a lot of what we do. We have the same security issues to deal with that everybody else has, plus a few extras. Our goal is always to keep everyone on the latest OS. We're very, very aggressive about OS updates. With Mavericks, that was great. We green-lighted pushing people upgrading to Mavericks 2 days or 3 days after launch, after release, and we had the whole fleet on Mavericks in about 3 months.
Yeah, most of it in 2 months, and
most of it stragglers over the next 30 days. Yosemite has not been such a good story. We just green-lighted it with 10.10.3, and we're right now working to get the last stragglers onto Yosemite. We have high hopes for Mountain Yosemite. Hopefully we'll be able to sort of reproduce our past glories of Mavericks, we'll see. But in any case, point releases, OS updates, Java updates, Flash updates, we're very, very aggressive. We use Monkey's great forcing tools to force these on people. We have other tools for forcing actual major OS updates if we have to. We open source a project called Santa. Just about a year ago, maybe a little less than a year ago, which is a local binary whitelisting system. So it's kernel level. It runs every time a binary launches. It takes a hash of the binary, compares it against a local SQLite database to see if you're allowed to run that binary or not allowed to run that binary, and blocks it at that level if it doesn't work. Right now, it's just the client's been open sourced, and I can neither confirm nor deny that we're working on a server that we will open source later. Cauliflower Vest is a server, again, built on Google App Engine. I'm sorry, Santa. There is already somebody else that's open sourced a server for Santa, by the way. I don't want to slight them at all.
We have a slide on Santa next.
Yeah, sorry.
That's fine.
But I said something. Anyway, Cauliflower Vest, we also have a slide on, which I'll talk about. We do a lot of monitoring and a lot of log analysis. We capture all the logs off all the Macs, so billions and billions of log lines, and that's all queryable and can all be searched by people who care. It's not always me, but somebody.
It's usually Anthony.
Usually Anthony. So Santa, binary whitelisting. I forgot we had this slide. It's such a great slide, too. There's a GUI agent. I didn't talk about that. There's a GUI agent which pops up and says that, sorry, you can't run that. Haha.
It's called Santa because Santa knows who's naughty and who's nice.
Yeah.
Names.
So
Names
a much
again.
better name, Cauliflower Vest, which is an anagram for key escrow?
File vault escrow.
File vault escrow. So when they released 10.7, we really liked File Vault. We were very happy to get full disk encryption at the OS level, but they didn't supply any way for us to escrow the giant license plate recovery keys. You could escrow them with Apple. That wasn't going to fly with us. So we reverse engineered, when I say we had, I mean us, really, really smart people, reverse engineered the APIs for the key escrowing, and we were able to grab the keys, and we built Cauliflower Vest as a place to store them. So it's, again, a Google App Engine system. It stores the key escrows. It tracks access to the recovery keys. Obviously, with 10.8 and 10.9, we were able to use the publicly published APIs, which made us much happier because they weren't as likely to break. Not that they were unlikely to break, but they were less likely to break. But this gives us logged and auditable access to the escrow keys. Alerts users if someone accesses their escrow key for any reason. Gives us a way to recover escrow keys for people who have been exited from the company and things like that. We've actually begun to use it to store other things besides file vault escrow keys because it's a very elegant and efficient system.
Yeah, a Windows team internally uses it for BitLocker, and our internal Linux distribution uses it for Lux or whatever they're using now or something. Anyway, some crazy thing. Is this me again? Yeah. Yes. So this is things we've talked about again. So of course, we're using App Engine for anything that's a server because we're a small team. There's 7 of us, and there's 65,000 Macs, and we don't want to have to manage a whole fleet of servers and have to do that as leave that to another team. So another team can manage all of App Engine, and they're pretty good at it because all of Snapchat runs on App Engine. I don't know how that happens. So this App Engine is great. It scales really well. So no additional work from us. We just put the Simian instance up, and then the users keep on coming. And if the backend needs more horsepower, the backend gets more horsepower, and it just happens. So we've basically grown from, I think when I started almost 10 years ago, there was a few thousand machines, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000, to 65,000 now, and it's the size of the Mac operations team has been roughly the same. We started around 3, went down to up to 5, down to 2, now we're back to 6 or 7. So it's been pretty much the same. Really we haven't had to add more people on our team just because we've had more Macs. All of our systems had to be really scalable, and using the cloud, Google's cloud in this case, really helps. So some of the other tools we use, a lot of the stuff we've mentioned. So Python is fantastic. We use that a lot. Most of our management tools or wrappers around management tools, like we have a wrapper around around Puppet that's all written in Python. That does all the sort of downloading and GPG decrypting and verification stuff. We also use Objective-C code as well in various places. We use Ruby because we have to, because of Puppet. I think I would like Ruby if that was all I used, but I do almost everything in Python, and then I switch to Ruby, and my head can't. We're starting to do more and more with Go. The concurrency there is awesome, and as you might imagine, with 65,000 things, even the more you can do concurrent, it's pretty great. So we're working a lot of the things that that show up, interfaces for the user. Those are done more and more in Objective-C. We had done things in like Cocoa Dialog with Python and other random bits, but we're doing more and more with Objective-C, sort of real applications. It's pretty nice. And we're doing some more C work as well with like the Open Directory plugin and some other sort of low-level interaction stuff that really must be in C. That's there. We mentioned Dremel. It's not an open source version of this, but there's a white paper about it. This is basically a way it's a tool that can access all of these logs that get shipped up to the internal production logging system to Google. Dremel allows us to do queries across this giant data set with a sort of a SQL-like language and come back very quickly. So you can get an answer for how many times has this log line shown up across the whole fleet in seconds. So this is a wall of links. We tried to get as many links as we could. So we talked about all the tools we use. Links to the Lisa presentation and the white paper about Beyond Corp. Those are good. The Lisa presentation was fascinating because it was all like sort of large systems, large Linux and Unix system administrators, large-scale groups. Half of the room was like, yeah, that's awesome. The other half was like, how does that even work? What do you mean no corporate firewall? What? So that was fantastic. And the white paper is really good to read, too. It gives you a good idea of what sort of we're doing internally at Google and how we're managing all that. I think we'll go back to this other slide in a second. But yeah, so ask questions. Anything else? Thank you.
Hey guys, I manage 200 Macs, 65,000. Wow.
Yeah, same with me. Yeah.
My question is, are your users admins? Ours are not, and it saved us so much work. So just wondering if
mostly yes, they are. They have local admins.
So how do you work around that when and if there's a need to work around something that's happened, that something screwed up, and you got to deal with it?
So I don't really want to say we trust our users. I mean, we do. But that's why we have other tools that run in the background and try to make sure that the management bits that we care about are always there and running. Now, when they break, we try to fix them. If they are intentionally if they're intentionally sort of disabling all of our management tools, and obviously they're smart people, a lot of the people are software engineers, they figure things out. They disable it. So going back to the whole Beyond Corp thing and the no privilege network, the way most of our systems work is you have a machine certificate, and that's what's sort of on the machine, and that gives you access to the various systems. And if the management tools stop checking in, like we stop getting logs from the machine, we stop getting successful Puppet runs, we stop getting all these other things that, all these other signals we collect, if they stop showing up because they've disabled the tools, we revoke the machine certificate so they don't have any internal access anymore. So, which basically turns the machine into just another Mac, which is still, we can do a lot with it, but there's a lot of things they won't be able to do. So it's sort of the carrot. And to a certain extent, we sort of have a limit of the things we're willing to fix technically. Like, we'll do a lot to sort of make sure that things are working from our point of view. But if the user's sort of maliciously disabling stuff, that's a management issue, right? Like, someone else needs to you can't do that, or your job goes away. So. Yeah, and we are moving away from sort of local admin stuff, or users as local admins as well. But it's been a long time coming. It's complicated. So our users are all very used to it as well. So it's.
When we've done it in other sites, we've got it. Taken away privileges, and it's a hard battle. People just rebel against you for it, but.
Right. I think we're going to go in a method that can hopefully have all the things that the users would like to do, they would normally use local admin for, they would still be able to do in some sense.
Right.
And then obviously there'll be exceptions, and we have a lot of Chrome developers or something that I'm sure they'll need it. So. Yeah.
Question over here.
Are you guys using Docker at all?
Docker
internally?
No. Apparently Google does use it.
But yeah.
But as I mentioned earlier, but we don't use it at all.
Yeah.
We use Google App Engine for most of those things that you'd want to use use Docker for, and then we rely on other teams to support the server infrastructure. So we have no OS X server infrastructure at all, and we rely on other teams for whatever server infrastructure we do need. And generally, it's virtualized, but on a different level than Docker. So Docker sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Other questions? Hi, you'd mentioned you're moving away from mobile accounts. Can you explain why?
No, we're moving away. The new plan is instead of being mobile accounts backed by LDAP, which is right now only accessible when you're on the corporate network, which is not really that good because if the user changes their password, that's not reflected until the next time they're on the corporate network, and we don't really want to have that.
Which, for a certain portion of our users, is never.
Yeah.
But their laptop is never going to be on the corporate network again after they get it.
Right. So instead of doing that, the plan is within 10.9 and 10.11, and we'll just present the next few months don't happen, is an Open Directory plugin that talks, instead of talking to LDAP, it will talk to a SSO, a public-facing SSO site. So we'll have a little script that sort of talks to that, and it'll be a mobile account backed by that instead. So if the internet isn't there, they can still use the cached password that the SSO thing handed back. But it'll be accessible anytime it'll be accessible for password changes or any, account locks or whatever you want to do, as long as there's an internet connection.
Will this be available with multiple SSO systems?
Well, right now it's sort of specific to an internal corporate implementation of the Google login page you get. It's basically that, but there's an internal version that we have specifically for sort of corp use, and we have a tool we're writing that sort of talks to that directly.
I mean, our goal will be to open source it.
Yeah, hopefully.
And We won't do the work to get it to work with another SSO system, but the code will be there, and you'll be able to take a look at it and hopefully fork it for whatever you want to use it for.
Great, thanks.
That's often how we approach things. It's like, well, we're going to do the work we need to get it to work for us, but we'll put it out there, and hopefully other people will be able to make it work for them.
Yeah, I've been, like, with the whole open sourcing all of our tools, I've always wanted to, like, even if I do something this is probably really Google specific, and I don't know if anyone will ever want to do this in the same way ever again, it would still be good to have that out in the world in open source so that maybe someone else will stumble across it and come in useful. So I'd rather than trying to think of a full-fledged, this is the way to do it perfectly for you, and it's generalized, and everything's happy, and you can just plug this thing in. It'd be good, like I try to at least have our team just push the stuff out when they can, and we can make changes to make it, more generalizable, and we do that very, very happily. But I like to be able to just, get the stuff out that we can, and hopefully.
And even better, other people can fix our stuff for us.
Yeah.
We love that.
Yeah.
We've already had some fixes for Santa from the outside world. It's awesome.
Yeah.
One more question. Do you have any plans to update the Google email uploader tool for Apple Mail?
No idea.
Okay.
They wouldn't tell us if they.
Yeah. Probably. No idea.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, we don't use Apple Mail. I don't think very, very few people actually use the Apple Mail tool. Internally, at least.
No, I don't know. I think surprisingly there's a lot of people use Apple Mail. I'm always shocked, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so if a 0.1% of or if 1% of our users, that's still 650, I guess. So, I don't know. Crazy.
One more question, Mike?
So internally, I'm sure you guys have a lot of internal apps that your developers want to push to your Mac fleet. Do you allow them commit access to your repos and stuff, or do you offer that as a service you guys provide?
Yeah, well, so if they want to make changes to Puppet, and we have some internal things where they're doing crazy local firewall rules, it's crazy. So but it's all internal. It's all in our internal source control system. So they can just, hey, here's a change list, and then we say yes or no. I mean, we're the owners of our tree. So if they can't just push something, they can sort of basically send a pull request. It's not Git, but
I mean, if someone's developing an app internally and wants to push it out to the fleet, the usual push and pull is over how fast we'll do it. I mean, generally we very much want to help Google developers develop and get the feedback from the fleet, but we don't want them to treat our fleet like a bunch of beta testers, right? They should be very open with users. This may not work. Don't install it if you don't want to. And two, they often want to iterate much faster than we're comfortable iterating, and that's usually the only conflicts we have. Generally, we're very open to let's just we can help you push that out.
Any more questions? No more questions? No more? Oh, Alistair, sorry.
He knows where we live. So.
yeah, we just talked to you 2 days ago.
I know, and I don't get to talk with you with a mic in front of my head. So there's 3 questions, 2 of which you don't have to answer.
Can we pick which 2? Can we pick which 2 we don't answer? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was in YouTube Tokyo, AirDrop was turned off. Is that still restricted?
You mean for
is AirDrop turned off on Google's Mac?
Yes. Well, we want to disable DNS and multicast DNS broadcasts because that gives away a lot of information on what kind of machine you are and where you come from and what your username is and what company you're from. Right. So we sort of disable it. We have users have a knob they can set if they really need to use it, but
we discourage it.
We discourage it. Yeah.
And 2 is the only really serious question, which is so there's profiles, there's CFPrefD, and the actual APIs to deal with the defaults or preferences database on the machine. And there's the configuration management tool of Puppet. Does Puppet make the rubber meet the road for what you want to deal with in the way of system-wide preferences?
Mostly.
And kind of so is that with profiles that show up in SysPress for them?
We have, we're installing configuration profiles with Puppet. Using, it might have been the code. I don't know whose code it was. We copied some code, found some code, started using it.
Probably someone in this room.
Probably, yeah. So we're pushing.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, we're pushing profiles out with that. So the things we can manage with profile, we do because that's sort of the correct way to do it. Some things we're fiddling with plist because that's the only way to do it. It really kind of depends. Like the disabling multicast DNS broadcast is basically edit this plist file in /system blah blah blah. So we want to make sure that which won't work in 10.11. So we've actually filed a thing at Apple say, hey, how do we do this now in 10.11?
So Puppet does rule the roost when it comes to these configurations, and
it's
the one-stop shop for whether or not it's a profile or you have to tickle a file directly.
The way
the way we do it now. Yeah, so we do profiles where we can. If we can, it's we change files on disk, and it's fine.
Rock and roll. There's one over here too. I'll get that.
Just quick question: do you guys use Credent on your Mac laptops?
Use what?
Credent, like data protection, Dell?
No.
No.
No, it's just it's built-in fileable too.
Oh yeah, you guys didn't plug the North Pole as the Santa.
Yeah, he forgot to mention any data. So that's the one that someone else came up with quickly, and we have a more complicated one that we're doing.
But,
we may or may not.
But North Pole is awesome.
Yeah.
But ours is more complicated.
I'm sorry. So the third question.
I mean, if we're ready. If we're ready.
Okay, take the mic away from him. He doesn't have a mic.
Academy Awards when they play the music.
Any more questions or from anyone else?
I'll answer Alistair's third question.
The Cauliflower Vest client has been referred to in nicer terms than it kind of looks like something that end users shouldn't trust. The open source version.
The question is that why does the Cauliflower Vest client look like a piece of malware? That's what I'm getting from you.
Yes. so that's different internally, and is there any plans to change that, or?
We do almost everything at the command line with the internal version. People don't see it very much.
Yeah. So
I have to say that there's a number we have. I mean, bugs do get filed against this thing ran. It's so ugly. Oh yeah, we made that. Sorry. So that's not our strong point.
Okay. So,
Beauty's not our strong point.
That's legit.
I actually don't know. I don't know what the external one looks like compared to the internal one. I've been maybe. I don't think we've changed much internally versus externally though.
Okay.
Thank you, Ed and Clay.
Thank you.